You are listening to the Two and Out CFL podcast, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network.
Travis Currah, Sheldon Jones with another offseason edition of Two and Out, probably our last one before the big man comes down the chimney. I love that festive hat you got going on, Mr. Jones.
That's right. It's the best time of the year.
You love Christmas? Like, so many people get stressed out. I mean, the weather can be frightful, to say the least. I know there's been some freezing rain out my way, all that kind of crap. But other than that, the calories don't count during the month of December. So what's not to love?
Yeah, I love everything except for how the presents thing goes. As I get older, the presents thing I don't care about it as much anymore, and I just care about the family and the food, the treats, and the getting a few days away from work, that kind of stuff. So and the Christmas music. I love Christmas music.
What a big heart, Mr. Sheldon.
I just hate how commercialized it is, and everyone has to go out and buy a nice expensive gift for people to show how much you love them.
I don't like asking for gifts because the things that I want now cost a lot of money. My TV is dying, but I'm not asking for a new TV.
You know what I want for Christmas? I just want a shoehorn. I want a nice long shoehorn to help me get into my shoes. That'll tell you how freaking old I am.
I'm going to up my benefits for Christmas so I can get more chiropractor coverage in 2025. So there we go. Self-care on the list for Sheldon and myself. These CFL teams are making it all happen before Christmas as well. Several moves to name over the past week. We know teams like to get things in place before Christmas so they can obviously go into the new year and start focusing on players and free agency and all that good stuff. It comes a lot sooner than we think. We'll start with the Ticats, who have named their new general manager as Ed Hervey is off to Edmonton. Ted Goveia is the general manager of the Hamilton Tiger Cats. I was just watching his introductory press conference. He's from Burlington, Ontario, so he gets to go be the general manager of a team so close to home. He was talking about growing up. His dad was an Argos fan, and for a while he was actually a running backs coach. Ted Goveia was with the Argos about 15 years ago, and his mom would call him up and say Oski wee wee while he was a coach with the Argos. So things in the family run deep. The passion runs deep, and after 10 years with Winnipeg, and obviously bringing so much great American talent to the fold in Winnipeg, he'll be taking that expertise to Hamilton. It's just good to see good people stay in the league for so long and continue to move up. I really think this is a good move by the Ticats.
Yeah, typically we see a lot of recycling with GMs and coaches, and so it kind of maybe seems like this might be that because he's been in the league for so long, but this is his first chance actually getting to be the guy. So I think Ticats fans should be pretty happy about this, just looking and seeing the players that he's able to. I know it's not just him, but that he was able to bring to Winnipeg and, got them to 5 Grey Cups in a row. So obviously he knows a winning formula and what he's looking for when in his scouting and all of that. So I think this is going to be a very good thing for Steeltown.
Now, what I'm also curious to see, I don't know if you noticed this, Sheldon. I think everybody in the CFL has noticed for a little while, and maybe in a way it's continuing. It seemed like Calgary was the model franchise, and then coaches and players got poached from that organization and have gone on to have success elsewhere. Toronto, For example, Ryan Dinwiddie, the head coach there. So many players in Toronto. I think maybe we're going to start seeing the Mike O'Shea effect around the CFL. Not only because Ted Goveia spending so much time in that Winnipeg organization, but Buck Pierce spending so much time in that Winnipeg organization is now going to take what he has learned under the guidance of Mike O'Shea. Buck Pierce said as much in his press conference that he has learned so much about being a man as much as a football coach from Mike O'Shea, and now he is the head coach for the BC Lions. So just like Calgary spread out all over the league, I think now we're starting to see that with Winnipeg, as those guys that spent time building up that organization are now going to take their talents across the CFL.
Yeah, and that's just what happens in pro sports, but we just, I think, notice it a little bit better in the CFL just because of the 9 teams, and we have certain teams that go on very long streaks making the playoffs, and we have teams that go on very long streaks not making the playoffs. So it's always fun to see all that. But yeah, the Mike O'Shea effect is real, and he. Unfortunately, success brings poachers, and when you get too good, then sometimes other teams are going to want to try to find some of that magic potion that gets you that good. So, really happy. I think Buck Pierce has been ready to be a head coach for a while. I think, he may not have ended as great in Winnipeg in the fans' eyes, with the offensive performance and kind of maybe decision making in the Grey Cup there, but I think he's ready, and it's good for him to go back to BC and see they're a team that is just this far away, and I think they certainly have the talent. We'll see what talent stays and what talent they're able to get, but I think this should work out better for BC than maybe the last time they had a rookie head coach, I hope.
Now, obviously, this West Division going into next year is going to be a pretty fascinating study to try to figure out in the early goings of the year with the amount of change going on. I mean, so far, the East, for the most part, is pretty steady in this offseason, where a lot of the change has gone on is in the West Division. And you brought it up. A lot of Bomber fans not happy with Buck Pierce's offense over the last little while. Not only in the Grey Cup, they're bringing up some of the struggles with making adjustments and things like that. And we saw it in the Grey Cup. The adjustment when Zach got hurt, or the lack of adjustments when Zach got hurt, and trying to stick with the same old game plan maybe from the beginning, and it clearly didn't work out. And now Buck gets a promotion going to BC. Now, I do hope things go well for him on the West Coast. But the way I'm seeing things going now, I know that they're going to go into training camp. Nathan Rourke's going to get a whole camp with the team, and it's his team. And there is no drama at quarterback going into 2025. But I just see that BC Lions team taking a hit going into next year. I know they were only 500 this year, but 12-6 the 2 years before that. There were back-to-back West Final losses, but now losing the head coach, losing Vernon Adams Jr., possibly losing their number one receiver in Justin McInnes. He's a free agent, so we don't know what's going to happen there. And possibly losing the offensive coordinator in Justin Maximic. Actually, probably.
He's gone. Yeah, he's gone.
Losing him to Edmonton. It does feel like a lot of change, and next year might be a season of adjustment in Vancouver. That's kind of how I see it going right now.
Yeah, I think it's going to depend on who Buck's going to have on his staff. I know Ryan Phillips is still under contract for next year. It's one of those rare times when a defensive or a coordinator has, time left on their deal after a head coach is gone. So it'll be interesting to see what Buck decides to do there. But hopefully for Lions fans, there is some sort of veteran coach, veteran coordinator there that he's still able to get some help from. I know that's usually the way that I would like to see a rookie head coach kind of set up. I have said on this pod before that I kind of wish that Corey Mace had that here, just an extra veteran voice in the meeting room and during game day. But it's to be determined to see what kind of staff they can do, and free agency is going to be huge because there may be some of those players that were on the Vernon Adams side of the locker room, because I think it was clearly divided a little bit, and maybe some of those guys might try to follow him to Calgary. I know I think it's Jay McNeil said that Calgary, for the first time in a long time, are going to be buyers when it comes to free agency, and they're not usually used to doing that. So we'll have to see what the Lions, what Buck Pierce has to work with, and see. I don't see Amar Doman really being okay with a long rebuild. So I think, they missed out on the Grey Cup this year. They missed out hosting, and they're going to want to be able to get back to that Grey Cup ASAP. So
they need to get better in the trenches. That I think clearly is the number one priority that the BC Lions should have going into the offseason. I know it's sexy to get those receivers in there that put up the yards and put up the points, but they were lacking in the trenches, and Matthew Betts did come on later in the season. He's a free agent as well, and I think he's probably going to take the payday going into 2025, and why shouldn't he? Why shouldn't any of these players? And you brought him up. Vernon Adams Jr. was quoted as saying, I am basically the top recruiter this offseason, so we'll see who he brings to red and white. I know that there are some veteran receivers already there, like Mark and Michelle, like Reggie Bagleton, but Geno Lewis is a free agent. Could he go down the QE2 to play with his old buddy Vernon that he played with in Montreal? That is a big name that I am watching this offseason.
Yeah, I'm not too excited about that. It's tough when, I think it's pretty obvious that Calgary is the one team that I really do not like. And so when the quarterback that I actually really like gets traded to Calgary, it kind of, it's a head and a heart kind of situation here. But, I think that they're going to be desperate. They're going to be desperate to try to get as many free agents as they can. But we've seen that happen where, you come out of, February or whenever free agency starts, and we see teams win free agency, and then it doesn't translate onto the field. So I think, we might have to pump our brakes a little bit, because in a lot of fans' opinions, the wrong people were scapegoated in Calgary. So the problem may still exist there, but certainly they've upgraded their quarterback position, and as you said, and as Vernon said, he's going to be that recruiter, and he was that when he went to BC too. I remember him saying that in the off season, and they got pretty good, and they got some quality players there. So again, time will tell, but lots of changes in the West, and then there's one team that seems to be pretty status quo. So we'll see how that works out for them.
It will be pretty interesting to see how Dave Dickinson changes his philosophy going into next year. I think, traditionally, he hasn't had that big play offense, really. But Vernon Adams is a different guy, and I think he's at his best when he's allowed to make those big throws. And, sometimes that comes with risk and turnovers, but hey, that's all part of the fun from my side of things here. I don't think that's always been sort of the way Calgary approaches things, but we'll see how they're going to work together going into next year. And then the recruiting process and all that brings us to Edmonton, because now Mark Killam has been named the head coach of the Edmonton Elks. So we got a couple staffs to figure out. What's Edmonton's going to look like? What's BC's going to look like in 2025? And after so many years in red and white, Killam goes north on the QE2, maybe with a stop at the Donut Mill on Gasoline Alley. Oh, so good. And yeah, they got the Boston creams that have the legitimate sort of whipped cream in the middle. So I know Sheldon Jones would be a fan of that. Mark Killam brings passion to Edmonton.
You wanna talk about donuts with me right now, man?
So, Krispy Kreme opened up in Edmonton today. I got a media preview invite last Wednesday. I wasn't going to take it. And then the night before, my wife...
I would have punched you.
Dude, it was a sketchy drive, freezing rain. Like, the ice was closing in on my windshield. Like, I barely made it.
I almost was going to take like 2.5 hours worth of train rides to go to Delta to get it when we were in Vancouver. Luckily, they were selling them at the train station
you got lucky
for a
there,
fundraiser. Yeah, but I paid like 3 times the price for them. Worth it. Hashtag worth it.
So,
also, my niece is very upset that you got to go to this too.
Ooh,
just
is
so
she?
You're aware. Oh yeah, same
I
with
can't
Tammy.
be disappointing her. Is she mad or disappointed? Because if she's mad, I can deal with that.
It's definitely disappointment.
Ooh. I don't even want to tell you more.
forgets.
So I walk in and hot off the presses, I get presented with the OG glazed donut. And I get the whole tour. I get to make some donuts. I'm behind the line. And the team there is incredible. And then upon leaving, I get presented with 4 dozen glazed donuts. They're all eaten now. But the guy that was first in line at the Krispy Kreme location in Edmonton is from Calgary. He got in line 3 p.m. the day before and spent all night in line. Like, that is dedication. Good for him. But yeah, I think I have a future job as a food influencer. But
that video is well done. Yeah, you did a good job on that video.
Thanks, man.
Voiceovers and everything, like you did. Yeah.
Thanks, man. 22 hours a day that facility can operate. 2,600 donuts an hour it can produce. It's basically heaven in Alberta.
And I believe a long time ago when I told you about Krispy Kreme, and I told you that when they're warm, it's life-changing, and you mocked me. And then I see a tweet where you say it's life-changing when they're warm. So I just wanted to remind you that, yes, I know how life-changing it is.
Yeah. Although I did have somebody in my mentions say they were the worst donuts ever. So
yeah, because that's just a hater and a loser. Nobody likes it. It's fine. His only joy in life is telling people that what they enjoy is not good.
So, I guess, Donut Mill, the local joint in Red Deer, shout out Krispy Kreme, shout out. These mentions are for free. But this brings us to
sponsor us.
Yeah, Mark Killam being the head coach in Edmonton. And I think it's universal. The players love him. He spent nearly 2 decades in Calgary. He went to university in Edmonton. He was a Golden Bear, and now he's putting on that green and gold. He wore green and gold, I think, in his minor football days in Lethbridge, if I remember correctly. So Mike O'Shea, Bob Dice, Mark Killam, Corey Mace, Canadians that are coaching in the Canadian Football League. That's awesome. And I know they threw in Dave Dickinson there. Congrats to him for getting his Canadian citizenship as well. But I think this is so cool. What I see in Edmonton between President Chris Morris, General Manager Ed Hervey, Head Coach Mark Killam is passion. And I know it doesn't matter if you win the offseason, but just watching these guys and the way they speak and the way they carry themselves, if I was an Edmonton fan, man, I would be feeling really good going into next season.
And they should, because you're right. When you're passionate about something and when you show that passion off, it's infectious and other people want to join in on that. So, I'm not an Elks fan, but I want them to succeed. I want, the fans who have been put through a lot of tough times, I want them to be able to get that. So I think, like you said, they're going back to the glory days of the former team name and all of that stuff. And I know they're focusing on the double E, and that's fine. Whatever. But as long as they, can take that glory that they had in the past, modernize it and bring it together what they're doing now in Edmonton, I think that would be great for all the football fans in Edmonton, and they could be well on their way to maybe some couple good years here, and then maybe opening up the upper deck again, and bringing back that must see Edmonton football team that they used to have.
And obviously one of their big question marks as well going into this offseason was quarterback. What's going to happen there? And last year, I think many fans were excited with the prospect of Tre Ford getting a full season at the helm for the Edmonton Elks, but that wasn't to be. They brought in McLeod Bethel-Thompson, and they start the season 0-7. Is that McLeod's fault? No. He played well. He put up yards. Him and at the beginning of the year, Bo Levi Mitchell sort of mirrored each other in the way that they were putting up yards and they were scoring touchdowns, but they were losing games, which is definitely the most important stat of them all. So Tre Ford comes in, he puts together some wins, he gets hurt, and then he gets back for those back-to-back games against Winnipeg in September, and they didn't go well. And I think that was probably his first taste of post-Labor Day football that actually had playoff implications on the line. And maybe it showed him, this is what it takes to win in the CFL and what playoff football is like. Because those Bombers, when they dug the hole, they started playing playoff football, and that's what got them to the Grey Cup. So now, Tre Ford, it's your team, dude. Right now. I know they did say that, you got to earn all your opportunities. Those are the big football buzzwords. But I don't think we see many backup quarterbacks get extended for 3 years and have a big introductory press conference. So it's Tre Ford's team right now. All the confidence in the world from the head office in him to go into next year and make it his team. How does he respond to that pressure? I guess that's the new question in Edmonton.
Yeah. Hopefully he responds well. Hopefully he is given the time to, mature, because, he's been on such a yo-yo in his time in Edmonton, and I to be honest, I'm kind of surprised he re-signed before free agency. Like, I think that obviously Kilam and Thompson and everyone must have, been pretty good and given him like what he wanted and explained that it is his team, because he was jerked around a lot. And, when you're starting one week, not starting the next week, starting, get injured, come back, like that's not a way to establish a flow and to establish leadership. And so, hopefully he's given the chance, and he's going to have growing pains because he's still a young Canadian quarterback who, unfortunately, there's a reason why we haven't had that many Canadian quarterbacks in the CFL, just because of the caliber of play in the States, and it's just the amount of players that are down there. So he's already against the 8 ball there, but this team sees that they think that he can be the guy for the future and to take them back to the promised land. So hopefully it all works out.
It's kind of funny because I realize the way I'm talking, I probably sound down on BC with the amount of changes they've made on their coaching staff going into next year. Edmonton's sort of in the same boat, but I don't know. I just get the sense that it's a more positive feeling going into next year.
I think there are two teams that are, one's going, it just seemed like BC was up, and then they kind of, when Nathan Rourke came back, everything kind of just changed, and then they fell down. But Edmonton, it kind of started down, and then when Kristian Jones left, it kind of just seemed like starting to go up. And I know that it's going to be a different regime, and G-Roy and Jarius won't be back, but Mark Killam's been ready to be a head coach for a long time. He just has obviously been picking his spot, and he's found his spot, and I think there is a lot to be excited about. I think there is stuff to be excited about in BC too, but I think Edmonton fans have a little bit more hope than maybe BC fans right now.
I think about a Labor Day matchup between Vernon Adams Jr. and Tre Ford, and this Battle of Alberta just got really interesting again, and I think we're going to have some fun with that.
But have we ever seen Dave Dickenson with a running quarterback before? Since
himself?
Since himself. Yeah, exactly. Like, but he I know he wasn't that much of a running, like, right. So like, he's like, as he ran as much as maybe Henry, but like, so he's used to having that pocket passer, that quick release pocket passer, and so he's gonna have to change his philosophy a little bit, unless if he's going to try to make Vernon Adams just a pocket passer. That might not be great for Stan fans. So that's the one thing that I'm really looking forward to see how Dave Dickenson actually uses Vernon Adams.
I do think there's a part of VA that wants to embrace that side of his game more, just to prove that he can be that guy. And let's face it, I think it probably makes careers last a little bit longer when you're not getting it in the open field and getting nailed and that kind of thing. But yeah, it's an interesting question to see how that is going to go in Calgary. And speaking of those quick release passers, I would definitely say Trevor Harris qualifies as that. He is extended in Saskatchewan for one more year. Now, I know the big question in Rider training camp last year was sort of who's going to be the number 2 QB behind Harris. Were you happy enough with what you saw from Shea Patterson in 2024 that maybe the experience he got this year makes them feel pretty comfortable going in with that duo again in 2025. I think with Trevor Harris at this point, I think he's got the talent, but the health has to be a question now. Kind of missing significant time both of the last couple seasons.
Yeah. Well, with any luck, if they don't have the O-line injuries that they had this year, and maybe they can try to be a little bit consistent with their protection of him. But to be honest, I think Patterson was okay. I think, unfortunately for him, once Trevor came back, he was kind of relegated back to that short yardage quarterback, and he wasn't very efficient when it came to that. So I'm more kind of interested to see what Jack Cohn can do. Obviously, if they're going to bring Patterson back to training camp and it's a competition for number 2, cool. I think a lot of people are going to be surprised I say this, but honestly, I would probably take Jake Maier over Patterson as a backup. I'd probably take Cody Fajardo over Patterson as a backup. Wouldn't
that be wild?
Crazy
If Fajardo ends up in Saskatchewan?
It would be. But stranger things, right?
Oh man, part of me just thinks that just brings a lot of drama.
It would, but I honestly
you got to do what's best for the team. Yeah. I get it, but
yeah, but I think like you said, Trevor Harris's health is going to be the question, and as I said before, if let's say the Riders are the team that has the most consistency going into next year, that's nothing but good for them as opposed to the other teams. It looks like they're going to lose linebacker coach JC Sherritt to Edmonton, so they're going to have to find a linebacker coach, and linebacker was a very good strength of our team, so that's very important. But if the Riders have a hot start again and then lose Trevor Harris again, I don't see Shea Patterson being the guy who can be that next guy, unfortunately. I wish I would have saw more from him this year when he's in there, but he was serviceable at best when it came to being a backup quarterback, and he won a few games, lost a few games, but I would like to see somebody a little bit more veteran, more of a starting experience. I'd take a Schultz. I'd take
Nick Arbuckle, Grey Cup MVP.
You know what? I would take Nick Arbuckle, to be honest, because he would be very familiar with the playbook, because I think Nick had his best with Calgary and with Toronto, and obviously that's the same kind of offensive game plan that Mark Mueller calls. So I take Nick Arbuckle. I just, we're in a position where the Riders are at the back end of a quarterback. We finally, ever since Darian Durant, we haven't had the guy, right? We maybe thought we had the guy with Claros. It didn't work out. We thought we had the guy with Fajardo. It didn't work out. Worked out for him in Montreal after, so kudos to him. But that's Trevor Harris. I'd say it's kind of worked out. We got back to the West Final this year, and that was great. But that knock is that Trevor can't win the big one. That knock is that Trevor struggles to score touchdowns. So I think we saw him score more touchdowns this year, so that was great. And I think when he was healthy, he was probably the best quarterback. So if he can stay healthy, I think we're talking about who's the next quarterback in a couple years as opposed to next year. So we'll see, but I honestly do think it's going to be Jake Maier, and that's going to be funny for a lot of people who have heard me and my love for Jake Maier. So I think that will be kind of funny. But,
Tune out Nation member Darren is going to love that.
He would. But honestly, I think, Jake Maier actually does make a lot of sense because Mark Mueller was his quarterback coach before. Mark
kind of similar QBs too,
Yep. And you know what? Like we said, there was good Jake and bad Jake, and there was a lot of times where his receivers didn't help him out, and there was a lot of time that his O-line didn't help him out, and so maybe Jake needs to change the scenery, and if he can mentor into Trevor Harris for a year or two, that could be pretty beneficial for future starting.
Jake Maier becomes the franchise guy in Regina. Sheldon Jones. If he wins a Grey Cup, I got to see that Maier on your back.
I'd vote for him for mayor if he can win us a Grey Cup.
That's all that matters, man. I even made amends with Dudney Dwight Anderson when he joined the Green and White. back in the day.
Once you join the green and white, you're pretty set. You except for John Chick. Screw that guy.
We got a couple of weeks until Christmas, and I know already the signings are coming fast and furious, so maybe you should mention some top free agents from each team in the CFL. Montreal, man, 2023 Grey Cup champs. It looked like 2024 was on their way there, and now Cody Fajardo, who in the summertime, it was probably the East nominee for MOP until he gets hurt. It probably could have been Cody versus VA at one point. Obviously, that didn't go that way. But they've got some free agents like running back Walter Fletcher, who was a yak machine last year. I actually think the Alouettes are probably, I don't know, we'll see what Jason Moss does. Like, he defies, I think, sometimes what I would like to see an offense do and run the ball a little bit more effectively. They got away without doing that, and they won games. Canadian receiver Keon Julian Grant, I think if he has been healthy throughout his entire career, probably would have a lot bigger numbers. He's definitely a capable receiver. And James Letcher Jr., we know how dangerous he is in the return game. Those guys are available as free agents. But I look at Ottawa's list too, and look, a lot of these guys are going to be extended. They could be extended by the time you hear this show. But Ottawa's got Lorenzo Malden, who has become a monster on the D-line since leaving Hamilton. Maybe he will have a pretty handsome payday in the offseason. Justin Hardy, the receiver, who's criminally underrated, I think, in Ottawa, puts up catches and yards like nobody's business. But also Darius Pickett had his season come to an end unceremoniously because of an injury. And I don't know if he's going to be ready for training camp, but he was definitely one of the most prized free agents from Toronto after 2023. And I think is a leader and just somebody you want in your locker room no matter what. So he might be a name to watch this offseason again, Sheldon.
Yeah, there's so many good free agents out there, and just, looking at with the way the contracts are, and hopefully in the next few years it gets a little bit better where, we have some more of that guaranteed money maybe floating around and 2 and 3 year deals. But yeah, like that list, Janarian Grant, Willie Jefferson, Willie Jefferson has said that he wants to get paid. He's done taking those friendly deals. He wants to get paid now. So will Winnipeg be able to pay him?
Well, for Winnipeg, Dalton Schoen is a free agent again. Kenny Lawler is a free agent, and Tyrell Ford is a free agent. I know the NFL workouts are happening. Like, I believe it's Jake Julian out of Edmonton and Constantino out of Hamilton. They're punters. They've gotten worked out by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and there's going to be more players getting opportunities there. I think Tyrell Ford might be a guy that gets a few NFL workouts this offseason, but I look at Winnipeg's list, and every single year it's like, how do they put this together? How do they keep this core together? I just get the sense that Winnipeg is going to do it one more time, and then after next year they're probably going to have Zach Collaros off the books, which will save a pile of money, and everything's going to be centered around Brady and that kind of thing. But Lawler's going to want to get paid, Willie's going to want to get paid, and they both deserve it. I do wonder if somebody has a season-ending injury, what does that do to their value in free agency? So they might be able to get a decent deal on somebody like Dalton Schoen, right?
Yeah, I was just going to think that. Yeah, I think that he, Kenny went to Edmonton, didn't do great, came back and probably had to take a little bit less, right? So now he's in line for more because he had a great year, and yeah, so maybe you can, whatever Schoen's going to maybe lose probably goes to Lawler, but I don't know, man. Like Winnipeg has already said that they're definitely going to go over the cap. They've already said that they're it's a Grey Cup, it's all in. So, will it work? Will they get to that sixth Grey Cup? Will they win that Grey Cup at home? Because if they don't and they go over their cap by a bunch of money and, they lose at home or they don't even make it, like that's just a terrible situation for Bomber fans. And then that may be the end of this era as we know it in Winnipeg.
We talk about pressure. The pressure's really on there now.
Yeah, and they have, Kyle Walters, Mike O'Shea, they're in their last year of their deal. It's not necessarily a lame duck situation. It's a all or nothing situation.
It's a fascinating year in Winnipeg. I'm looking forward to next year. We talk Hamilton, a lot of change there. David Beard is a free agent. Stephen Dunbar Jr., who, man, he goes to the Elks. He did an XFL thing, right? And he goes back to Hamilton, had a great year. And then James Butler. What's going to happen with the running back, James Butler? I think he is going to hit the market in February. Just the way his playing time went throughout the year. Is he injured? Is he not? Is he a healthy scratch? What is he? I don't know if he had favor with Scott Milanovic. He's probably going to be elsewhere this year. We look at the Champs too, because, man, they might have the most important free agent out there, and that is Wynton McManus. I think a lot of people had him as their pick for Grey Cup MVP. Of course, they wanted to go with the story, and why not? But Wynton McManus is all over the place, involved in almost every play that he's on the field for. And I think, well, maybe he sticks in Toronto, but man, he's going to command some bread.
Yeah, he's the type of player that, when his contract comes out, I'm fully expecting it to say highest paid defensive player in the league, because he deserves it. He, like you said, he's always there. He's in every play. He has just a motor that does not quit, and every CFL team would want a player like that to anchor your defense around. So if he does make it to free agency, if the Argos aren't able to sign him before then, it could be like when Eugene Lewis was getting $300,000 to be a receiver. We could see $300,000 for a defensive player, maybe.
Whoa. Jake Seresna is also a free agent heading into the year. Toronto's got so much depth at defensive line. They've been monsters there for a little while, so that is a strength. That's an interesting name to watch. And then, of course, Janarian Grant, who Winnipeg did not sign. He goes to Toronto, has another great year doing what he does for the Double Blue. Where is he going to end up next year? Probably a pretty good Christmas wish for the Toronto Argonauts. We talked to Edmonton. They've locked up one of their free agents in Tre Ford. What happens to Gino Lewis? Is he going to stick around in Edmonton? Because a lot of times, I think with Tre Ford, we've seen it off the top of my head a few times against the Riders, where Tre Ford's doing his magic, improvising, and then who's there but Gino Lewis to make the big catch and the touchdown. I think having a receiver like him is important for Tre, but then you got his buddy, a few hour drive south that wants to play with him again as well. I think Gino, who, ended the season with 8 games in a row with a touchdown, something crazy like that, he can still make it happen, and he's going to get paid too.
Yeah. it's really interesting to see who's gonna want to play for what quarterback and what team, and who's gonna send the money, who's gonna spend the money, who's gonna, what kind of marketing contracts are we gonna have again in this off season? Because we saw Nathan Rourke really open the floodgates with that. So I think we thought that last year's free agency was going to be crazy, but I think this year's is going to be even more insane.
They have Martez Ivy. He's up for an extension as well. Had a great year at offensive line for the Elks. If we go to Calgary, I actually think, they're probably buyers. Obviously, they're going to want to extend Jalen Philpott. He had, remember that crazy touchdown catch he made during the summer? 24 years old, was a UFC dino. I think he would be a big Canadian name to keep there in Calgary, but he's going to be one to watch. But then other than that, the Stamps are going to have an interesting offseason there. If we go to the Lions, William Stanback, Matthew Betts, Justin McInnes. Do you think a head coach goes a long way into, recruiting people? Like, do people want to play for Buck Pierce? Do people want to play for Mark Killam? Do you find that to be a big factor? It's an interesting question.
I think probably. I think there was a lot of former and current Stampeders that were saying how happy they were that Mark got the job in Edmonton, that he's going to do a great job. So I think there certainly are. I think you saw in Saskatchewan, there are certainly players that followed Corey Mace to the Riders from Toronto and also from other places. So, I think that's probably one of the best ways that the teams can recruit if they have a coach that is well liked, and there's going to be players that might be willing to take a little bit less just to know that they're going to be going into a system that they feel is going to be work out and maybe get them some of that extra playoff money on the back end of their contracts.
As for Saskatchewan, they already did lock up their quarterback for another year. Marcus Sayles is an interesting question. Remember, he had a rough start to the year and then turned it around to being one of the strongest DBs on that team. But Jameer Thurman is a question. And he had a sling on Grey Cup week in Vancouver. But was he playing with a broken arm for 2 months or something crazy like that?
Yeah, apparently. Well, since August, I think is what the rumor was going around Grey Cup week there.
Wow.
That's when he actually heard it. From I had a conversation with him at the tweet up, and from what he said to me, like, it seemed like he's pretty much all in with the Riders. So we'll see what happens. But he made it definitely seem to me like he was back for some unfinished business next year in Riderville.
Straight from the source, breaking news. If you're wrong.
Hey, I was right once.
If you're right again.
I'll always have that.
That's what we call a trend.
Gino Lewis to Saskatchewan. You heard it here first.
Throw it against the wall. Eventually, it's going to stick. And there's a few names for the wish list for each CFL team. I want to point you to 3downnation.com. I don't know if you read this story, Sheldon, but Maven Maurer, the first openly transgender former pro football player, 2 Grey Cups won, an amazing story. The JC Abbott ended up writing here. I don't know if you got to read this, but I think it's a must read. And the welcoming with open arms for the 2000 Grey Cup team by the BC Lions to her, I think was amazing. And man, this is an important story to read.
Yeah, it was really awesome to see it, and JC did a great job. I remember when, when she played back in Regina, she played for the U of R, or the Rams, at least, I believe.
She's from Saskatchewan.
Yeah. And so, just seeing how intense she was on the field back then. And, it's
9th all time in special teams tackles. You got to be intense to be on that list.
Yeah, great. And most outstanding Canadian in the Grey Cup. The thing that I love the most from that article, though, is just, how she said it was like a 98% of the former players were supportive. And that's, sadly, I was shocked by that. I wish I wasn't shocked by that, but I was very happy to see that was the case. So it's great that she got her story out there, and hopefully that can, help some other, former or even current players or just people to be able to live their truth.
I'm seeing Kristian Matte has retired for the Montreal Alouettes. 14 years with the team. 13 years between Grey Cups. A 2-time champ, winning in 2010 and also 2023. So congratulations to him on such a long and a great career with the Alouettes. And then there was interesting news, a rumor that TSN was for sale, but then Bell Media came out and denied that report. A lot of times these things are where there's smoke, there's fire kind of thing. An interesting conversation because Canada's TV landscape, I don't want to get too nerdy on the podcast, but it's really changing a lot. Chorus is struggling with global and things like that. So they actually lost Canadian distribution rights to the Food Network. So like Rogers kind of bought that. Food Network Canada on our guides is becoming Flavor Network at the end of the month, and then there's going to be I've been reading too much about this stuff, but to see TSN included in this whole media landscape that the country is going through right now is definitely interesting. And I know some people have said, hey, maybe Amazon is going to be in on this, but usually these things don't exactly manifest out of thin air,
Yeah. I think, it's interesting. We have to remember that they also sold their half of MLSE. So they got out of that. And the rumor is that they're just, wanting to get out of not only broadcasting, but sports, it seems. So, it would make sense that they would want to get rid of that. I don't know if it means they're going to sell all of TSN, or maybe they just sell off some of the contracts to other different places. Like maybe Amazon gets the CFL rights. Maybe, I don't know what else is even on there anymore, because that's all I watch is CFL and TSN.
I don't know if they got they got the World Juniors and they have some NHL. Curling, but anyway, regional NHL anyway, but yeah.
Yeah, curling's a big one too. But I know Sportsnet does the Grand Slams. I think it's TSN has like the major bonspiels, but
right.
Yeah, I don't know. But like you said, when there's smoke, there's fire. Like it's not often when, a rumor comes out about something big like that and it turns out that it's not the case. So Bell's obviously going to want to say that they're not for sale, because that's going to do is drive the price down if they do admit that they're for sale.
Yeah.
So we'll just have to see. But it could be pretty impactful for the CFL, because after the 2026 season, that's when the new contract, I believe, is to be negotiated. So will there be a TSN then? Who knows? Will there be something completely different? I don't know.
Everything's changing so quickly. Who knows what's going to happen tomorrow?
Well, we're getting ready to one of our favorite shows go onto Netflix too, right? So
that's gonna
we're
be weird.
I think it's gonna
be weird, but we'll see. Monday Night
Raw. See how it goes. Yeah.
All right. I mean, maybe this is the last one we do before Christmas, maybe the final one of 2024. Hopefully we can get one more in before the end of the year. I think we can do it. There's probably coaching staffs to figure out and 42 more extensions, but yeah, we can do something.
Yeah, and honestly, like there hasn't really been teases yet, but each of the last, I think, 3 seasons, the schedule has come out this week. So
it might come out 2 hours after we put this out.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think there were some people speculating the 14th. So
that's a Saturday. See. That's not happening.
Oh, no, maybe it's the 12th then. Whatever the Thursday is, the 12th. Okay. I think people are speculating the Thursday. But yeah, we'll have to see and start planning.
We'll be happy right off the bat, and then when people dig in, they'll be mad and convinced that the CFL is out to get their team with a terrible schedule.
Of course. And they are.
Later. I'm Travis Currah. He is Sheldon Jones. Take care of yourself and each other, especially during the holiday season. Don't drink and drive. Don't be an idiot. And we will talk to you soon on 2 and Out.
Thanks for listening. Find more great shows like this at CF Pod Network on Twitter.